How's everybody doing? Is everybody having a good time?
Absolutely.
You know what's really cool about this is that I personally have always been a classic Star Trek fan. I love the classic Star Trek series going back from 66 to 69. I also like the other incarnations, but what I like to reference is Star Trek holds a special place for me. So it's really awesome to see Star Trek fans and Space 1999 fans together like this. Because I remember back in the 70s, there was always that, constant pressure about, Space 1999, and Star Trek, and it's like, they're both awesome. So this is really great. This is a unity, so I just wanted to throw that out there. What's up, Warren?
Star Trek sucks.
Get out of the room. Says the guy with the Star Wars shirt on. Get out of here. We're just waiting on Nick, so he'll just be a moment, and then we're going to get started. 2 minutes? 2-minute warning? Should I do trivia? Space 1999 trivia? Star Trek trivia?
Oh! Star Wars!
Here's a Star Trek trivia question. This is Star Trek. I'll do this Star Trek question. There is one episode of Star Trek in the original series that we are never on the Enterprise. We never see anyone on the Enterprise. Does anybody know what episode that is? Except for our experts up here who I know probably know too. Because I heard Andre. Any guesses? Not you, Warren. Get out of here.
Shortly?
No.
Not Shortly?
Terry.
Is it the episode with Leigh Merriweather?
No.
The
That
Empath?
which survives, but no, it is not.
Mary?
Miri? No.
The Empath?
No. With Jem? No. Kathryn Hayes? No. God bless you.
Mud.
Mud? No. Good guess, but no. Bless you. Anyone else?
Mud's Women?
Mud's Women. Great guess. Wrong answer.
What season? What season was that?
If I give you the season, that's 24 guesses that you have. Oh, I just gave you the hint. I said 24 guesses.
Oh.
So that means it's third season. Did anybody catch that?
Okay. Did you say third season, right?
Third season.
Yep, okay, I know it. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's out of
That's
guesses.
entertaining.
What is it? Oh, the last one, Turnabout and True.
No, it's the second to the last episode. All our
All our
yesterdays.
yesterdays.
Yes, they're never on the Enterprise.
Mary and Harmony.
Mr. Atos.
Yes, A to
You
Z.
know why he has that name? Because the books are from A
A to
to Z.
Z, yeah. Okay. Anyway, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. We're very excited. It's been a wonderful weekend. And again, thank you for being with us. And thank you, everyone. So give yourselves a big round of applause. So with that said, we were talking about different topics, and again, something that would be really a lot of fun would be to do the Space 1999 Star Trek connection. And with that, we actually have guests that were involved in one incarnation or both. So we thought we would talk about that, and I'm going to kind of just like go around the room here a little bit, and then what I'll do is I will open it up to questions. So with that said, I am going to start with Karl Held, because out of everyone here, Karl was in regards to Star Trek, first Star Trek connection and Space 1999 connection, because he was in the episode Return of the Archons. So I just want to, Karl, talk to you about that as far as being on Star Trek and working on Star Trek, just to let the fans know and the folks know, if you wanted to say some words about that.
How much time you want to get? A minute or two? Just fast,
Yeah, maybe like about
You want some anecdotes?
3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the room and then we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me out there? Is this working?
No. Here you go.
How's this? Is that better?
Hold it up.
Okay, can we?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to be too loud either, One of the things that I hadn't realized was that I had done a script that Gene Roddenberry had written a couple of years earlier, and when I went into interview for the job, I never was asked to audition or read it. He just chit-chatted and told everyone. He said, "Carl's fine for the part," and they sent me home, and I thought, what's that all about? And then I found out years later that he had
Go a little closer.
he had written that particular script, and early on, and he there we go. Is that?
Yep.
now we're back again.
Yeah.
That's better.
Well, I forgot what I was talking about anyway.
Gene Roddenberry's
You were saying about Gene Roddenberry's script?
When I got onto the set, I was introduced to George Takei for one, and I had spent a year in Japan after I had been in the Korean War, and so I spoke a little Japanese. I wanted to show off, so I spoke Japanese to George. He was insulted, and I had no idea. How was this one? Oh, yay, better. Anyway, George's family had been interned, and George was fiercely American. And so he did not appreciate my speaking Japanese to him, so I got off on the wrong foot with him, but we squared that away right away, and everything was okay after that. I'd like to tell you one thing about DeForest Kelley, if I may, to show what a great guy he was. I was on the phone talking to my wife. We had one car in the garage and she had the other, and she was off doing something, didn't know if she was going to be able to pick me up or not. And DeForest walked by hearing me say, well, I don't know how I'm going to get home, but, and he said, when I hung up, you need where do you live? And I said, in the valley. He said, where? I said, Encino. He says, I'm going right by there, I'll take you home. And he did, indeed. We had a great actors chat on the way through the traffic and everything. But what a great guy. He just overhears, I need a ride, and he jumps in and wants to be of help. Isn't that great? I mean, that's a special kind of person, you know? There was another person on the show who I can't say that about. Okay, anything else?
And then in regards to Space 1999, because I know a lot of folks, maybe there were some folks that were not here, Karl, on Friday. How did that come about in regards to working on the show?
Well, I happened to be living in England at the time. My wife and I went over there for, we planned to go for 1 year. Because I had a couple of huge disappointments in Hollywood where I had my own series ready to go the next day and they canceled it for, you don't want to hear those stories. But I said to my wife, I want to go back to New York. I want to go back on the stage. We didn't have theater out here. She said, no. She said, we'll take off a year. We'll go to England. You can work there because I was born there. I said, yay. It was true, so we went there for 1 year and stayed for 12. So I was living there, had an agent, and when the part came up for grabs, I was sent in to audition. I don't think I had to read for some reason. I think it was Jerry Anderson is one of the producers, or
Yes.
yeah. I think Jerry had seen me do some other things on BBC, and so I was hired on the spot, and I'm so happy because I had worked with Marty in Outer Limits in a very popular episode. And I'd like to point out that if you're in a good episode, it rubs off on you. And if you're good and you're in a lousy episode, that rubs off on you too. So it cuts both ways here. But it was great to see Marty again and work with him. And we never visited each other in each other's homes. But I run into him in Beverly Hills, I don't know how many times, and we'd stop and then we'd stand there and chat for about a half an hour and rabbit on about this, that, and the other thing. And Barbara happened to go to the same hairdresser my wife went to, and I went there to pick up my wife one day, run into Barbara. And that happened several times. It's like, we're all family, although we've never been into each other's homes and what, but we know each other fairly well. And anyway, working on the show was just great. You know, and it was a lovely studio, Pinehurst, where we were at.
And Karl, the other thing too is in regards to Star Trek, your wife was your Sarah Marshall, who was also in the classic Star Trek episode, The Deadly Years.
That's right. That's where everyone ages rapidly except for her, and she's playing a doctor, or Jean Wallace, or something like that. And she plays the ex-flame. Kirk's ex-flame, which is kind of ironic because as most of you know, my first job as an actor was understudying William Shatner on Broadway, where he was playing a male lead. And that's where I met Sarah Marshall. She was also in the play. And they were having a thing, and we came into town, and she needed to rehearse while he was working with the other leading lady, and I was sent up as the understudy to run lines with Sarah, and we ran lines, we locked eyes. Bill got the elbow, and Sarah and I got 55 years, and that was that. So the interesting thing was she was playing his old flame in the episode. Because I went to visit her, and I was treated cordially by Bill. But it was great, and she was wonderful in the show. She was such a good actress. She really was. She was a sweetheart. And I miss her dreadfully.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you.
I want to listen to Karl's story. What?
Now, if you could tell us about, working, your connection, because you were in the episode of the Seance Spectre. For those that of Space 1999, everybody remembers her playing Eva Lewis. And then, of course, in regards to the Star Trek connection, you did two Next Generation episodes, as well as three Next Generation episodes, and then 2 Voyager episodes.
Well, same story. Yeah, that's it.
You got it.
He's like an encyclopedia. He knows everything. I mean, sadly, Seance Spectre, my husband directed, and I had a bit of a name, so they just got 2 for 1, and that was it. And it was a long time ago. And then when I moved to LA, the whole science fiction thing was like a mystery to me. I mean, I never understood why people like the idea of, things out there, UFOs and stuff like that. So it wasn't my sort of thing, but I seemed to connect, and I think Star Trek at the time was using a lot of English people, partly because of our theatrical background, but especially the English accent, and I think because I had a deep voice and I had high cheekbones, the prosthetics fit better. And that was torture. I mean, the first one when I played Sub-Commander Taris, and I went to get the prosthetics fitted, we had to have a whole face thing. And you sat in the chair and you had straws up your nose and a straw in your mouth, and you had to sit there for 45 minutes, which was bliss, I thought, because I just went off. I went off on a meditation, wandered around a few meadows. And suddenly to my left, this person who was going to be playing the part that Scott McDonald ended up playing, ran screaming, ripping this thing off their face. And I just thought, okay, so he didn't get the job. But and apparently it was a little test that they like to do, was to see who could take the prosthetics and who couldn't. And the prosthetics on Star Trek were the bane of my life. Because you to get them on took 3.5 hours, so you got to the studio at 3:30. They wrapped it about 6 or 7 if we were lucky, and then it took 1.5 hours to get it off, or maybe even 2 hours. Then you had to get home, then you had to feed the children, walk the dog, learn your lines, and be back at 3:30 in the morning. So by the end of the week, I was toast. I mean, I had idiot boards in some cases when it got too technical. But I had the masks left, one's skin was just irritated beyond belief. But because we were the guest actors, they just stuck it on with glue, so that killed us. And the actors all had specially sort of made to measure things. They just slipped on like a mask, and they never had any kind of skin issues. It was so annoying. I mean, Michael Dorn was beautiful the whole time. And then I had fish fingers. These awful, and they only made 1 pair, and they were these awful mittens which were impossible to utilize. And and they were longer than my hand, so they kept flopping over the edge of desks. And when I went to the loo, there was one particular time, I went to the loo, and the loo paper stuck to that, so I tried to pull it off, and then I pulled off the glove and it fell in the loo. And they'd only made me 1 pair. This is when I was doing Mirasta, Yale. And I only had 1 pair, and so I thought, and there was a lot of stuff on the desk that afternoon, so I had to fish it out and squeeze it dry, sort of. And I walked back. I didn't dare wash it, because I didn't know how I thought it was probably going to melt. And I went back and I said, I'm so sorry, but I dropped this in the loo. It's your fault for not having a second pair. And they said, what do you mean? I said, I dropped it in the loo. I've just gone to the loo and this one fell in the loo. What do you want to do with it? And they just treated it as if it was a hazardous material. And it was taken away and shoved into a microwave or something. It was, and I got it back. And they then tied them, like a child, to get the mittens through the top. So I had to, everywhere I went was following it. What else? I mean, those sort of things. But the rest of the time was just the horrendous dialogue coach who, if you put in an and or an it, would stop the take, and you had to be word perfect. And by the end of a 5-day week, when you'd done all this thing with the makeup, my brain was mush. It was, it was useless. So, but he was tough, Constantine. He was tough, but he ended up being a great friend. He was very particular. And that was it. We giggled a lot. We had a great time. Marina and I just spent most of it laughing with Patrick. And I was fascinated by the fish, that poor little thing that died every week, got boiled. It did. The fish in his office boiled every week. Animal cruelty. And then, but there's the thing about doing Star Trek was that I had never been interested, as I said. And standing on the deck in Picard's, on the deck with Picard, with Patrick, and they started the velvet curtain with a little sequins attached all over, and they started the hum of the engine, and it felt like you were moving, and you were out there in space. It was one of the most magical moments of my life. So I sort of got it. Thanks.
If we can hear from you.
Okay. Yes to everything that Carolyn said. I played Nuria, leader of my Mintakan people. I loved the role. And I also had those leaving my house at 2:30 or 3 in the morning to get to Vasquez Rock, a location because we shot most of it there. And Mike Westmore did the makeup. And I had ears and a forehead, and what was really fun is that I was given fresh ones every morning. I got fresh ones every morning. And the ones that I'd worn the day before were given to one of my Mintakan people. But I loved the role, and I thought the story was just wonderful. Who watches the Watchers? I love the role of Nuria, and I simply got it. I do have another connection aside from Space 1999. I also want to mention Dark Shadows, because Dark Shadows and Star Trek started the same year. In 1966, they did 97 episodes of Star Trek, and we did 1,225 of Dark Shadows. And in a way, there was, I always thought of Gene Roddenberry and Dan Curtis as just brilliant creators. In the case of Gene Roddenberry, going ahead in time and telling, really, the stories were always, I thought, parables, and they were spiritual in nature, and there was always a lesson to be learned, and there was certainly a lesson to be taught in Who Watches the Watchers, when we did Second Generation. But Dark Shadows went back in time, and we also told great stories drawn from great literature. We started off with Jane Eyre, and did the Picture of Dorian Gray and Wuthering Heights and Turn of the Screw, and we grew on those stories for Dark Shadows. So to my mind, there was always a kind of similarity. I played 4 roles in Dark Shadows. We went way back in time. Josette was in the 1700s, and Lady Kitty Hampshire in the 1800s, Rachel Drummond in the late 1800s, and then Maggie Evans, a waitress in a diner in Collinsport in contemporary times. But again, the kinds of stories that were told, bringing in paranormal creatures, ghosts, witches, werewolves, warlocks, it was it was an amazing show to do. But again, the characters on Star Trek, I was a Mintakan. I believe you were a Romulan, or yes, yeah. Again, it was simply a fascinating show to be able to be a part of, and I was thrilled when I got the role, and it was wonderful.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Yeah, thank you.
Nick, you want to share some stories about your time on Star Trek?
Yeah, sure. Hi. I'm lucky enough to have been to 3 different things with Star Trek. The first one was when I was doing Space 1999. Back in 1976, I think it was. There was a Star Trek convention in Columbus, Ohio. And I was invited to that because I was in this new science fiction series that a lot of the Star Trek people had hoped would be a successor to Star Trek. Of course, it's nothing like Star Trek, so there were people that were disappointed. There were other people who were equally thrilled, and they seemed to like my character of Alan Carter. So I was invited to be the first person outside of Star Trek to be invited to a Star Trek convention. At least that's what they told me at the time. It was very thrilling. I'd never been to anything like it in my life. I'd never been to any fan conventions. So it was a very exciting time. And some of the people there wanted to form a Space 1999 fan club. Well, actually, they wanted to form a fan club around Alan Carter, and I said, I don't think that's a very diplomatic thing to do. If you really want to get the Space 1999 support from this, better to call it a Space 1999 fan club, and you can put your emphasis where you like it. So they did, and some wonderful people were. Was anybody here today that was at that convention? Because a couple of people are here, but they're not in the room now. Yeah, they were reminding me of that very thing. So I spent the next 50 years doing all kinds of other work after Space 1999, with lots of people promising us that we were going to get another series any minute now. But that's like trying to get a marriage back together after 50 years. So eventually I was asked to audition for a Star Trek show, which was Next Generation, with Patrick Stewart. And in fact, it was Will Wheaton's final show in Star Trek, and it was called The Final Mission because they get a crazy, drunken, rocket fuel drinking pilot, guess who, to take them down to this planet which apparently had no water on it because it was a desert planet. We went and shot it in the Mojave Desert. It was really hot, and it was great to be there with these people, but there was nowhere for us to hide. And Patrick Stewart said to me, do you have a Winnebago? I said, no, I don't have a Winnebago. But he said, come into mine. And what a kind and gentle man he was. And every day that we were there, he would let me sit with him in his Winnebago, and Will had one as well, but he would come in and join us. So that was a great experience, and I found it very thrilling to do that. Some 2 or 3 years later, I was asked to do Deep Space Nine. And I worked with Karl. It was sometimes the Star Trek people do rip-offs of well-known films, and it's no secret that this was a rip-off of Donnie Brasco. I played the Al Pacino role as the head criminal boss of this underground syndicate off there out in space, and Karl played the Donnie Brasco character, who was undercover, who I finally discover is going to put me in and I'm going to go to prison. When I discover that, I have the power right there and then to kill him. But I say to him, I should kill you, but I like you. I don't know what the hell to do, and I'm standing there with my cat because I was a very strange character. But it was a thrill to do it. The interesting thing about that story is that the producer hated me. He didn't want me to do the role. The director I had worked for up in Canada doing one of the final episodes of FX, which was a television series that surrounded that FX film. And I got to play the guy's father, which was a wonderfully naughty role to play. I was a 55-year-old, probably 65-year-old at that stage, going on 14 years of age, doing all sorts of terrible things that I was embarrassing him terribly. And he said to me, the director, "We love this character, we're about to go into a second series. Will you come and be in the second series?" Well, I was down in LA with my wife. I'd had enough problems with having to go back to Australia for shows, or go to England for shows, and leave her alone in LA, and she didn't like being here, so she didn't want that to happen at all. So I said, "No, I can't do this." And he said, "Well, I'm going to come down to LA very soon, and I want to use you as soon as I can." As soon as he came down, he got into the Deep Space Nine genre as the director, and that's what he offered me this role. Little did he know that the producer of the show wanted to give the role to his next door neighbor, who had been his friend for a long time. The character was a great big heavy set man who was rather like the big heavy set guy that used to play all the cops, Brian Dennehy.
Yep.
Yeah, so very like him, but that wasn't him. And so I went in and auditioned, and my director was standing behind the producer giving me the thumbs up that I was doing a great job. And then he came out afterwards, he said, "Look, I don't know whether this guy's gonna take it." He said, "You were great and I really want you, but he wants his next door neighbor. So what do you do?" So I went home, a couple of weeks later, I didn't get the part. A couple of weeks later, I'm on the golf course playing golf, and my phone goes off, and I don't usually answer it when I'm on the golf course, but I could see it was my agent, so I answered it, and he said, "Quick, get to Paramount Studios." I said, what for? He said, "The guy that got the role, he dropped dead." I mean, I swear to God, I hadn't wished him any ill. So I went down to Paramount Studios straight away. I was at Rancho Park, wasn't far to go. They threw me in the wardrobe and makeup, and they said, "You'll start tomorrow morning." And the director came to see me. He said, "Look, the producer is beside himself. His best friend has just died. He doesn't want you in the role, but I want you, all right? So know that I'm on your side. Go home and learn the lines, and I'll see you tomorrow." So I did. I went home, and I came and I did the first day's work with him, and I loved it. It's a great character. The following morning, we come back. They've all looked at the dailies. The producer hates what I've done. He comes in, he bangs on the door, comes in, stops the production, takes the director aside, and I hear the director finally saying, "Get the fuck out of my studio. I'm doing what I'm doing, and I think he's great." So I know the guy hates me. Can you imagine starting on a show knowing the producer hates you, and he's already looked at the dailies to prove that he hates me? It has become one of the most popular episodes that Deep Space Nine has ever made. The producer was wrong. I'm pleased to say they liked what I did, and that's the end of that.
Thank you. We also have two guests that are affiliated with Star Trek, and I'm going to give the mic over first to Andre Bormanis. Bormanis, I'm sorry, Andre. When it comes to names, I butcher names, and people always butcher mine, so welcome.
Thank you so much. Good to be here. Nice to meet all of you. I became involved in Star Trek in kind of an unusual fashion. I was physicist, astronomer, NASA policy wonk way back in the last century. Had a very different career path in mind, but had always loved Star Trek, and had always loved Space 1999. The original Star Trek, I was a little kid when that was on. Didn't really understand it much until I started seeing it when it was in reruns and syndication as a high school student. Also was in high school, sophomore or junior, when Space 1999 started showing in the United States. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. One independent station in Phoenix, they showed Space 1999 every Saturday night at 6 o'clock or something. And of course, it was the highlight of my week. Yeah, you can see I didn't have much of a social life, I guess, but I have very fond memories of sitting in front of the television with my TV dinner and a can of strawberry soda and watching Space 1999, and I thought it was brilliant. And the production values were astonishing, and that was something that I really, responded to, having that interest in physics and astronomy, and understanding something about how rockets worked and so forth. It was amazing to me that they could do these extraordinary special effects shots. I always thought that that Space 1999 probably had more in common with 2001: A Space Odyssey, more so than Star Trek. And part of that was, of course, the look, and John Dykstra, who did the brilliant effects, and the model work was just exquisite. And in fact, little known bit of trivia for you. I'm not sure how public this knowledge is. It's probably semi-public, but my wife is an attorney and she works at MGM. She's been at MGM for many, many years, in-house counsel. And basically, she does litigation research. So when people decide they want to sue MGM over this, that, or the other, she's the one who digs through the archives and finds the contracts and, you know, was there a violation? What about this? What about that? Et cetera, et cetera. Well, apparently, not long after Space 1999 premiered, MGM got a letter. I guess it went to MGM. But it was a letter from Stanley Kubrick, and he was basically wondering if he had some kind of ownership rights over Space 1999 and was considering suing either the studio or Jerry and Sylvia, I'm not sure who, but he thought that moon base, that was the moon base in my movie, and da-da-da-da-da, you know, and it never went anywhere, but I thought, wow, Stanley's very protective of his work, and of course he shot 2001 in Pinewood, and so on and so forth. But I found that to be a really interesting bit of trivia, and of course once I started working on Star Trek, I eventually became a writer and a producer, and I remembered noting when people from Space 1999, other shows that I was a fan of, would be doing guest star roles. Remember when Nick was on and so forth. If you ever said something like microfusion initiator, that might have been my line at the time. I was not a script writer at that point. I was just the science consultant. But it was great fun, and it's astonishing and wonderful for me to see that 50 years on, these shows still have an audience, and I think that that's a testimony to you know, the kinds of timeless storytelling and the quality of the work. And Carolyn was talking about the terrible makeup. That was a real test for a lot of the actors. Some people could act right through that. Armin Shimmerman, who played Quark, you know, when he first had to do that make, it was god awful. And then he became a regular character, a new character on Deep Space Nine. He shines through that makeup. Other people, they get lost in it, they panic, they freak out. We had a guy, I guess it was on Enterprise. I don't remember the name of the actor. We had a lot of people who played Vulcans. Joanna Cassidy, I got to write an episode where she played Paul's mom. She was fantastic. But there was a guy who was playing a Vulcan, and the Vulcan makeup was not terrible, as you probably know. It's pointed ears and eyebrows and that sort of thing. But this guy, I don't know why, he just, he flipped out one day, and he ran off of the set, and we never saw him again. And the only thing, a day or two later, somebody found a pointed ear, you know, on the sidewalk outside the stage. And that was all that was left. So it was a challenge on many levels to do those shows. And of course, when we were doing Star Trek, it was 26 episodes a year. We were doing 2 shows simultaneously. Deep Space Nine started the final season of Next Gen, and then when Next Gen ended, we started Star Trek Voyager. So we had those 2 shows going. 52 episodes a year, right? I mean, crazy amount of work, but fantastic stuff. And you know, it was just kind of a privilege to be part of it and to get to work with the kind of people that you guys have been celebrating here. I finally got to meet Barbara May. I met Martin Landau years ago. A friend of mine, Frank Spotnitz, an old school friend, was a producer and writer on The X-Files and co-wrote the X-Files movie that Martin starred in. And I remember seeing Barbara Payne at a Gelson's or something in West Hollywood like 30 years ago, and I was like too shy to walk up to her and say hello, but what a thrill. And it's so great that we're still all here sort of celebrating this work and sharing our memories of it.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
How daunting is it to think that 52, you have to provide
Yes.
plot lines for 52 episodes every year? Shakespeare says there's only 7 plot lines in the story.
And we used all of them many times. No, it was daunting. And you know, when I was the science consultant and a freelance writer, I started writing stories and scripts for Voyager, but I was not on staff as a writer until Star Trek Enterprise. And that's when I really first felt that pressure, because Brandon Braga, who is the executive producer, showrunner, co-created the series, we got into his office in, I don't know, May maybe, or late April, early May. And on his office, 3 of the 4 walls were covered with these big whiteboard calendars. And on those whiteboards, you know, 2 months before we started shooting, were the start dates for every episode for that season. So we had, production begins, we had the shooting date for all 26 episodes. So you walk into that room and it's all blank. And you realize, oh my God, within the next 10 months, we're gonna be filling that calendar. And we would kick around stories for the first couple of weeks. We'd decide on a couple of stories, start writing a script. And we were lucky if at the beginning of the shooting schedule, we had 3, maybe 4 scripts ready to go. And from then on, it was just a race to stay ahead of the production schedule. And the fact is that, if we were to shut down, if we didn't have a script ready or some huge problem that we didn't anticipate, and we have to shut down for a day, that cost the studio $100,000 some odd back then. And we never wanted that to happen. And it never did.
Never did.
Never did.
Wow.
But I remember I had a great piano teacher. I studied piano for a while and studied jazz piano with a guy named Charles Lewis, who's still playing, still a great composer, pianist in Phoenix, Arizona, 92, 93 years old. I remember him telling me when I was learning some improvisation and composition stuff from him, being nervous about, God, what about, performing this? He's like, oh, you know what? Warriors are made on the battlefield. And those first 2 seasons on Enterprise, that was my real training in screenwriting. I had taken some, classes years before, but man, to actually be there in the trenches with everybody and know that, this has to get done, come hell or high water, that was something. But you know what? That's how you learn how to do it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next, I want to talk to Steve Warnack. Putting you on the spot, Steve.
Yeah. All right. So well, first of all, I will have to qualify my statement here that I was in grade school when Space 1999 and Star Trek, the original Star Trek, came out. But my favorite, and it's probably one of the most pleasurable parts of my childhood, was watching Star Trek and Space 1999 in front of, at the dinner table, which was the only time I ever agreed with anything with my parents, and we actually watched something that we loved together. Everything else was pretty much crap. But anyway, that was my introduction to both shows. It wasn't until Star Trek The Next Generation came out, and it was actually the episode Who Watches the Watchers that very much was made an impression for me, because for me, after watching it, was like, Star Trek is really back. Just the plot, the way it was done, it just really came together in such a beautiful way, and it was a great story. Made me want to write for the show, and soon afterward, a friend of mine told me that Next Generation had a speculative script program. I wrote 2 scripts for it, and a couple years later, actually, after my first submission, I got a call from Ron Moore's office, and they said, well, we can't use your script because it had 2 halves of 2 other episodes that came out, took up my plot, but they said, we would love for you to pitch to the show. So I'm like, great, would love to, and I proceeded on to my road to hell. And because it's always, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and my intentions were great. So couple pitches later, I got a call from Ron Moore's office. We're done with the show. I said, oh, could you recommend me to Deep Space Nine? And he's like, oh, sure, no problem. We could do that. All right. Pitched a couple times to Deep Space Nine, and I remembered very distinctly my one pitch was to Jim Crocker, second season, I believe. And he was like, okay, give me your pitch. And I gave it to him. And, I was in the worst condition possible because I had double pneumonia. And it was like 20 degrees below that evening. And he was like, okay, I'll take this back to the crew and see what comes out of it. Never heard back until finally in the following July, I think, June or July, and I said, let me call him up and see what's going on. It's like, hey, I made this pitch to Jim Crocker like last year. He's like, no one's talked to you? Like, no, nobody's said anything. It's like, oh, well, we're in the final throes of preparing for the new season. You might get a call back. Oh, okay. Got a call back a week later from Ira Bear's office and said, hey, we like your episode. We want to change the character to go with Odo, because we really originally had it with Major Kira. And it was this thing with this Jem'Hadar soldier who was we were trying to make him peaceful. And they liked it because it's really an echo of what was going on with the first two episodes of the search for season 3. So long story short, went out there, wrote the episode, and continued to then pitch as a freelancer to the shows further on, and that's how I met Andre on Star Trek Enterprise, because I pitched him this lovely idea with the Voyager doctor to come on to Enterprise, and we had a really great little episode idea there. It's like, well, because remember, it's like, wow, it's time travel, but it's not, and then we just, I contacted him some years later when we were working on the series, my series Helios, trying to get that off the ground. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to be a part of this. So that's the Star Trek part of it. The Space 1999 part of it came about in a roundabout way because Enterprise was done, and I had met some great people at the 2012 convention. I think it was in Los Angeles. And I was writing something. I had come out of a very bad affair and was writing a script, and I was like, is this really any damn good? And I was like, I heard Chris Penfold was going to be there, and I was like, oh, I remember him from the marquee and everything. And I was like, oh, let me just throw it in front of him and see what happens. It's like, here, I'm an American writer. Let me know if this is any good. I plopped the script in front of him. 6 months later, he called me. He says, yeah, you plopped this script in front of me. And I'm like, yeah. Like, and I read it. I actually enjoyed it. It's like, cool. It's like, let's talk about something somewhere along the line. It's like, we've got these guys who want to do this Space 1999 revival, and maybe we can talk about it. So, after that, we came up with this idea called Helios, and we continued on with it. And, he and I became fast friends until the day he died. So that's my story.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing, Steve. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the fans out there. Any questions or comments you want to share?
Well, these two guys, you guys both worked with Ira Stephen Bear. Was he a genius or what? He just seems so clever.
I love Ira. Ira's great. He is very smart. Genius, maybe, I don't know. That's a hard term to assign to anyone, I guess, in the sense that who really knows how to define it. But he was a force. certainly on Deep Space Nine. He was the one who really brought that show into the thing that it ultimately became. And I liked Ira a lot. I would see him from time to time. I never wrote for Deep Space Nine. I did do the science consultant thing for 6 out of the 7 seasons. I do remember once, I was in Ira's office, just talking to his assistant. I was down visiting, again, not on staff yet or anything. I happened to be at the studio. And it was my birthday. And I'm talking to Robin, Ira's assistant, and she's like, oh gosh, hey, happy birthday. Da, da, da. I'm like, oh, thanks. And Ira comes out of his office and he's like, Andre, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm good. And Robin says, oh, it's Andre's birthday. Oh, happy birthday, right? And then he goes off to wherever he's going on. A couple of days later, there's a knock on my apartment door. It's a messenger from Paramount. Gives me a package from Ira Stephen Bear. It was a bottle of wine. Nice. And not just any bottle of wine. It was a 1966 Margaux, which was a lovely French wine. And I don't know if Ira bought that for me or if he was regifting it, but it's like, and I was in my early 30s, I think, at the time. So I thought, you know what, I should save this. And I saved it for my 40th birthday in 1999. Speaking of space, 1999. Not only the year that the moon leaves Earth's orbit, but the year I turned 40. So I had it with a good friend on my 40th birthday, and it was astonishing. It was amazing, and I'd never really understood wine connoisseurs other than I like wine, but never really understood the depth, complexity, all the things people talk about, because I rarely spent more than $10 for a bottle of wine. So that's my Ira story. And I've seen him a few times since at like Star Trek events and the Writers Guild strikes. We've marched a few times together.
Thank you.
Sure.
Lindsay. Go ahead. Yeah. Lindsay.
Okay. Carolyn and Kathryn, I want to know how you felt about being 70s feminist icons, carrying your own TV shows, being the lead in a TV show, and did you interact with younger girls, teen girls? Did you know the influence you were having by being in those roles at the time?
No, not at the time. It happened afterwards. But then I began to realize, judging by the fan mail, exactly, especially when I was doing Survivors, and is this on?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Especially when I was doing Survivors in England and the sort of shows that I did. It was never intentional that I should play those roles. They just sort of happened, and I know the effect that those characters had on women in general, because I still get a lot of fan mail saying you changed my life and allowed me to do this and get out of that and stand up for myself and see myself as I really am. A lot of that, and it's been an honor and a privilege to have played some of those roles. I must say, to have had that effect. I'm very grateful for that. I love what I do, and if there's any way that my characters can speak to somebody who needs anything out there, it's just a privilege to be able to do that and love every single day. And it's heaven. It's heaven. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. If you weren't here, I wouldn't be here. So it's heaven. Thank you.
I did a series for CBS with Brian Dennehy. It was called Big Seamus, Little Seamus. And it only ran for a year, one season. But I played I played a woman who ran a hotel, and I remember the producer saying to me, I think we should make you an assistant manager because no woman would actually run a big hotel like this. And I did some quick research, and there were several women who ran hotels for the Sheraton Corporation, and I just did that was before Google, any of that. But I found that so offensive, and I went back to him the next day, and I said, no, I think that we should leave the role as is, don't you think? And I gave him a few examples and so on. I can't tell you that the number of young women that I have talked to who found some of the roles that I played inspiring. And it's a wonderful feeling. I go along with Carolyn on this. But that was the one instance when I really felt that I needed to, stand up for something. I didn't want to be the assistant manager. Okay. Does that answer it?
Questions?
2 words. The Orville.
Yes.
Is it coming back?
Yes. According to Seth, the last time I talked, I wrote for the Orville for 3 seasons, and the last time I talked to Seth a few months back, I wrote a book about the Orville that was coming out, and I was getting interviewed, and I knew people were going to, ask me, is there going to be a season 4? And so I called Seth and I said, hey, Seth, are you still thinking about it? Oh, he said, it's, what should I say, if I'm asked this question, which I probably will be. And he said, oh, tell them it's a matter of when, not if. So he's got a few other things right now that he's working on. I suspect that we would not start before the end of the year developing new scripts for season 4, but when Seth says he's going to do something, he usually does it. So he's got a lot of clout. So I suspect that will happen. It probably will not happen before next year.
Was it similar to doing Star Trek?
It was in some ways, yeah. It started out being somewhat more comedic, but it rapidly became more of a, thoughtful, 1-hour science fiction drama. The stories were parables, morality plays. Seth always, in the writers' room, we were always engaging in interesting discussions about what's going on in the world today, social issues. Seth had read a book by this guy, John Ronson, So You've Been Publicly Shamed. I don't know if you heard about this story. There was a woman who posted something on Twitter or whatever, and by the time she was getting ready to go on a plane to Europe, by the time she got off the plane, was getting all this hate mail and so forth. And so we thought, where is the world heading? Where is this going to lead us? And so we conceived a story idea around this idea of social shaming and people, voting on every little issue, direct democracy kind of a thing. It's always very, he gives us books by Naomi Klein for Christmas, and so he's a really smart, thoughtful guy. And I always knew he was very funny. I didn't know what a good writer of 1-hour drama and science fiction he is. But he was a huge fan of Next Generation growing up, and obviously a huge fan of musical theater. He's recorded albums. I remember we were in the writer's room one day, and Seth said, oh, I gotta leave early today. I gotta leave around 3:30. Well, why is that, Seth? He said, well, Barbra Streisand is singing at the Staples Center tonight. She's asked me to come up on stage and do a couple of duets with her. Like, okay, wow. Seth, tell Babs we said hi. And he's just like, he truly loves what he does. And I've never seen him raise his voice, put somebody down. He treats everybody the same. It's just such a joy to work with him. And I gotta say, like, you guys, man, I got to spend 3 seasons, working on the Orville, writing scripts and working with Seth and Brandon Braga, who was the showrunner on Enterprise and created that show. And I met Brandon the first year I was working as the science consultant on Star Trek, that final season of Next Generation, and we've been friends ever since. And we're writing partners on the Orville. We've written 7 scripts together for the Orville over 3 seasons. So I gotta say, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Anybody? No? Roy, go ahead.
Ask. Way in the back.
No. Dave?
Thanks, Roy. Carolyn, I just wanted to ask you about Survivor. Fantastic show. But Mike Healy also was brought back as an audio drama. How did you feel recreating that role? What was it like to do it as an audio drama? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I nearly missed getting it because I'd moved to France and I was living in France at the time. And it was only because a fan who was a huge fan of Survivors, he wrote to me and said, you know, they're doing audio versions of Survivors. And I said, no. And he said, do you mind if I tell them? I said, don't be stupid, of course, go ahead. So I wrote to them, and 20 minutes later, David Robertson, who was the producer, was sending me a message saying, can you come over, and we're recording the first season. And we did another 9 of them. And because of the pandemic, it's, for those who don't know, anybody who doesn't know what Survivors was about, nobody knew? It was 10% of the population is left alive after a pandemic hits England, and there's 10% who have to go out there and create new communities and find their way around and hopefully join up and create a new world. So, and I'm one of them. And it came back with a huge success level during the pandemic, and we just went on doing it, and we ended up doing 9 series of the audio stuff, and some of it is so beautifully written, and it was really lovely to be back with Ian and Lucy and myself as the triad, and we had a great time and had a lot of input this time into where they went. So that was a privilege, that show. It was a really great thing to do, despite the fact that I was hated by my producer.
I want to thank our guests, and thank you again.